Holy City Center Radio is episode 187, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, October 27th, 2023. Welcome. It is another edition of Holy City Center Radio, starting off your weekend on an awesome note. I hope you have a fantastic next few days. If you need some plans, be sure to go to holycitycenter.com/events, where you can find some amazing things going on all around town, whether you want to be inside, outside, both. There's a little something for everyone. Be sure to check it out. Also, we have a fun show today. We have a guest. Glad to have some interviews going again. Today, we will be talking to Clay Middleton. He is a native Charlestonian who is running for mayor of Charleston. He has a long, impressive resume. I'm not going to get into that now. He talks about it in the interview, but he is one of six people that is running for mayor of Charleston. That includes the incumbent mayor, John Tecklenburg. So that will be at the end of the show, but there is not a ton of content leading into that, so you don't have to wait very long. I'll just give you a couple quick updates. First, obviously, there's two stories, one national, one local, that unfortunately fluid situations, and I won't be able to provide the most up-to-date information. But as of recording this episode, here is the latest on the situation in Maine, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. This horrific mass shooting that took place at 3 different locations. It has left, according to authorities in Maine, 18 people dead and 13 others injured. Authorities are currently looking for, they originally called him a person of interest, but now have officially said he is a suspect who will be charged with multiple counts of murder when they find him. His name is Robert Card. If you happen to be in the Maine area or perhaps somewhere in New England, for whatever reason, you can find his picture online if you haven't seen it yet. So you can go get those details if you need them. The shootings apparently happened within just 15 minutes of each other. So in just 15 minutes, this person was able to kill 18 people and injure 13 others. He appears to have some sort of AR-15 style weapon in the photos that have been released from, security cameras and things. So just a really scary and horrible situation. He is still on the loose. They have not found him, so a massive manhunt is underway. A lot of residents in the area of Maine where this took place, Lewiston, Maine, are still on lockdown. School was canceled on Friday, or on Thursday rather, and I would imagine if they don't find him, they're going to cancel it on Friday as well. When you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you'll know more than I do here in the past, but that's the latest there. Obviously, just a shocking and horrible situation. And I know it's weird to say that about mass shootings, that it's shocking because it happens all the time here, but, still just devastating and horrible. So that's the latest in that situation. I obviously wanted to touch on that. The other fluid situation is a local story. So now let's get into our normal routine. So the Charleston County District Board of Trustees, the School Board of Trustees, plans to hold a special called board meeting on Friday morning. So depending on when you're listening to this, it may already be over. They are supposed to be starting at 8 a.m. at 75 Calhoun Street. It will be live streamed on CCSD's YouTube channel. So if you're listening to this before 8 a.m., you should be able to catch it. And usually their meetings will stay on their YouTube page. So even if it's well after 8 a.m. on Friday, you can go and should be able to rewatch it. It could get interesting because according to the meeting's agenda, the board will consider an independent firm's report on the investigation into allegations concerning Superintendent Dr. Eric Gallion. This has to do with the report saying, he was responsible for like a hostile work environment. So apparently they have a report from this independent firm, and they're going to giving the details of that. The part that gets even more interesting, it says that they're also going to be discussing a proposed settlement agreement between the school district and Dr. Gallion, specifically regarding what they say the resolution of his contract will be. The agenda says they'll also discuss the possibility of appointing an acting superintendent. So it certainly seems like the Moms for Liberty back candidates are getting ready to fire him, let him go, whatever the appropriate wording will be. And it'll involve some sort of settlement. So basically ending his contract and doing exactly what they've wanted to do, which is get rid of him. Now, that's according to the agenda. That's the way I'm reading it. who knows what will happen? You just never know with this board. So prepare for some fireworks, not literal ones, but it should be quite the meeting. And I will certainly update you all on Monday's episode. Meanwhile, unfortunately, some just bigoted and horrible packages and flyers are still going around Mount Pleasant. The Mount Pleasant Police Department is investigating after finding packages with anti-Semitic flyers in the driveway of multiple homes. Officers first responded to North Smokerwise Way on Tuesday in response to a suspicious package found in a driveway of a home. Before the officers arrived, a Charleston County deputy responded and said that the package was not an explosive but had anti-Semitic propaganda. When the officers arrived, they saw that every driveway in this area had one of those packages sitting there. They were just small Ziploc bags, and that included the flyer, also had some conspiracy theories in addition to all the other anti-Semitic propaganda that was in there. There is a resident that lives on Lindner Lane who provided a ring video to police that showed the person's vehicle that was responsible for the distribution of these packages. Unfortunately, the officers could only describe the vehicle as a black sedan that was being driven by one person, as there was a passenger throwing the packages out the window onto each driveway. So they didn't get out of the vehicle. There's really not too much they could go on, according to the statement that they released to the press. Officers claim they collected approximately 500 or more packages. So very upsetting that this is continuing. This is multiple weeks in a row now where anti-Semitic propaganda has been left in people's driveway. Mount Pleasant police are investigating this as well as the previous incidents. If you have any ring video of the sedan or whoever, if from the past incidents, if it's not the same people, if you have any information that could help officers, definitely contact Mount Pleasant Police so we can hopefully figure out who is behind these things, put a stop to it, and hold those accountable. All right, not a lot to discuss today, and the stories are pretty straightforward. Like I said, I'll update you on Monday. Now it's time to get into the interview. It's a very good one. I certainly enjoyed talking to Mr. Clay Middleton, a candidate for mayor of Charleston. Don't forget, early voting is underway. The election day itself is coming up quickly. You can, if you prefer not to do early voting or forget about it, Tuesday, November 7th is election day. So just keep that in mind, whether you're voting for Mr. Middleton, today's guest, or one of the 5 other folks running for mayor of Charleston. That's not the only thing on the ballot, of course. You can go and look up online based on your address, what's going to be on your ballot so you can prepare appropriately. Without any further ado, let's get into the interview. All right, joining me now is our guest, Mr. Clay Middleton, a native Charlestonian who is running for mayor of Charleston. He's got a lot more to his background, and we'll get into that in a moment. But first, Clay, thank you so much for joining me today.
I appreciate it, Christian. Thank you for having me.
Of course, my pleasure, and always excited to talk to people who are running for office. I know it's a bit of a grind, and you've probably been busy for months and months, so I appreciate you taking the time to chat today. First thing, let's just dive into your background. Who are you? For those who somehow may have not heard of you yet, what is your background besides just being a native Charlestonian?
Well, I have been in the South Carolina Army National Guard for 23 years. I joined the military January 6th of 2000 as a private first class, and now I'm a lieutenant colonel serving as a battalion commander, deployed overseas a few times, earned a Bronze Star. I have what I think is a unique blend of experiences on the government side, the civil servant side, having worked for Congressman Jim Clyburn in the legislative branch and having worked for President Obama in the executive branch. Both have been in D.C. and doing things across the country, but also here in Charleston when I worked for Congressman Jim Clyburn. Started out as an intern and then a caseworker and became his low country director before I left his office to work in the Obama administration. And I worked for the state of Charleston as well as the director of business services. Did that from 2017 until 2019. So my background has covered each level of government. as well as just being rooted in community activities, whether it's nonprofit organizations or various causes throughout Charleston and the greater area.
Well, first, thank you for your continued service. We certainly appreciate that, and not just with the National Guard, but also it sounds like you have a background where supporting the community in all sorts of different ways is important to you. Why is that?
Well, too much is given, much is required, and that has been ingrained in me. And in fact, I when I worked for Congressman Jim Clyburn, uh, part of the job dealt with being present, and in doing so, people want you to serve on their board. They feel that you could add value if you are on their board versus just being present. So at one point, I belonged to over a dozen boards and commissions in the Charleston area, from housing, economic development, education, uh, veterans and military families. So it's a number of organizations that I've been a part of and had an opportunity to know. This includes your anchored organizations, but it also includes organizations like the First Tee of Greater Charleston. And I was on the inaugural board of that organization and have enjoyed seeing how much it has grown. And to have my 8-year-old be a part of that is also a joy. But also the YWCA. I mean, I served as the chair of the Harvey Gantt Triumph Award Committee for about 13 years. And that has evolved during the time I serve as its chair. So being involved in the community is important because you have to give your time, talent, and energy right where you are. And that's how you truly make things better. That's how you truly, as I like to say, you can take off the tie, put the shoulders to the grind, and make a difference.
And making a difference, I'm sure, is part of my next question, and also being supportive of the community and helping out. But in addition to those things, why did you decide to run for mayor of Charleston?
Well, there are a number of reasons. I would say, from a broad perspective, for the last few years, you have to ask yourself, is there more you can be doing? Can you give up your time, talents, and energy elsewhere, or can you do so home? And for the last few years, I started this campaign 17 months ago, but at least a year and a half prior to that, been just thinking about what is next. What more could I do? And I did not want to uh, join the Biden-Harris administration. I mean, I did the transition team and have great friends there and work with them in a variety of ways, but I did not want to provide my time, talent, and energy there. And just kept going back to mayor, where the rubber meets the road, where is brass tacks, problem solving, your impact is seen. So for me, it was, if you have something to offer, and this was during the height of the pandemic. My wife realized I can be on the phone all day. And I was just frustrated at things that we weren't doing, that other cities were doing. I just felt there's more for our community. And rather than writing about it, rather than tweeting about it, rather than speaking about it, why don't you put some action behind it and run for mayor? And that's why I'm doing this. I'm also doing it because I have a 6 and 8-year-old. And my wife and I often reflect on when we graduated Burke High School, our peers were ready to leave. So were we. Now I didn't go far. I went to the Citadel after I graduated, but our peers left. But more importantly, that was hurtful is that not wanting to come back home because they did not see Charleston as a place that they can be seen, heard, and thrive and raise a family. I just don't want that for my boys. Leave because you want to get away from me, but not feeling you can't come back home because Charleston is a place that you can't afford to raise your family, that Charleston is a place that you feel you can't be seen, heard, and thrive. That's not right, and that's not good for the longevity of our city. When you have such a brain drain going elsewhere. So for those reasons, that's why my family and I decided that this is the season, this is the time to step up and put forth a shared vision of the future of Charleston.
I think that, that anecdote about people you knew moving away and not being able to afford to live in Charleston or not being seen here, I think that's an interesting point and kind of leads into my next question, which is, what do you believe are the most important issues the city is facing, and what will be priorities if elected? And I know there's so many important things, everything about being a mayor of a city, everything's important, of course, but what do you think's top of the list?
I think our infrastructure, housing, and education. And for infrastructure, it's all connected. It's connected to our transportation. It's connected into where we live. It's connected to where we shop, where we have recreation activities. It's health. It's climate. So our infrastructure here is aging. I mean, we are an old city. And with the amount of resources that the federal government has provided from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, Inflation Reduction Act, we have not applied for those resources directly when it's directly for cities. So as mayor, one of the things I would do is appoint a city infrastructure coordinator so that, for example, you look at the 25 competitive grants that exist under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law that started in fiscal year 22 and it ends in fiscal year 26. The city of Charleston has not applied for any of those resources. The resources that the city of Charleston has received from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law has been a pass-through from the state, not direct. Some of the resources that the city would benefit from has been because the county or the Council of Governments has applied and received those resources. So as mayor, I would change that. This individual would be responsible for being proactive in applying for those resources and working with the state infrastructure coordinator, because I have experience in how federal dollars work. So when there are programs and activities that they have to spend the money on, we want to be right there, not trying to figure it out, but being ready to receive and execute. That's what we need. That infrastructure also addresses flood mitigation, energy efficiency, climate-related matters, all of those things, reconnecting communities. So we are just not as aggressive as we should with the resources that exist. And with the housing front, in 2016, there was a $20 million housing bond that the city put on and the voters voted for. And it's 2023 now. The units that were supposed to have been built have not been built. $20 million. Where the hell has that gone? For me, it's just saying that for housing, we have to stop thinking about this the way we have. Whether you call it affordable or attainable workforce, everyone deserves an above average, decent place to call home and a safe place to call home. And we're not as serious about that as we portray. You have $50 million in choice neighborhoods from HUD that we've not applied for. You get $500,000 just for planning, which brings people together intentionally, and another $50 million to implement the plan that they just gave you the money to develop. Again, a missed opportunity to redevelop, revitalize blighted areas of our community to provide mixed-use housing. And we, as a city, can be more aggressive. I know we're updating the zoning laws to determine the level of density and where you can build, what you can build, but we need housing of all types, not just single-family homes, multifamily homes, townhomes, duplexes, etc., quadplexes. We need a variety in our inventory, and we cannot forget about those that are living with us now. those that are seniors, those that are on a fixed income, and how we can do a better job at making sure that people could age in place. We're not as aggressive to maintain the fabric of people in our neighborhoods now. And as mayor of the city of Charleston, we would not only be aggressive, but our aggressiveness would be rooted in evidence-based work. It would be rooted in clear goals, objectives, and lines of effort, and progress to goal. That if I'm asking you for X amount of dollars to do these projects, that you won't have to guess where we are. You would know where we are, because it's important that we are transparent in that. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we would do regarding that. And with education, I just think that even though the city of Charleston, the mayor, does not have any direct oversight of the public school system, educating our kids is everyone's business. And there should not be any low-performing schools in our city. And because people are now paying attention to the school board because of Moms for Liberty and what they have done to the superintendent, now you have these mayors, the one of Charleston in particular, now saying something. Well, late once again, because you have a mayor's office of children, youth, and family. As mayor of the city of Charleston, I would reinvigorate that office to make sure that there is no daylight between the education attainment of our kids and the city of Charleston. That means making sure that there are no low-performing schools in our city, because our neighborhoods have access to the same information and the same resources. Our community centers being extensions of learning, that we have more AmeriCorps and Vista and Senior Corps members to help with a variety of our programming, because we know where the struggles are in our community. And also looking at pre-K education as well. So there are a number of things, proven things, that we can do in the city of Charleston. And if we do not take such responsibility seriously, if we do not stop doing what we've always done, then more of our kids, more of our community would be history versus living and being in the moment and being a part of making Charleston greater and greater each generation.
I'm glad you mentioned the Charleston County School District Board of Trustees. It's well documented. Lots of people are well aware of the dysfunction or perceived issues, if not real issues, that the board is having. And as you mentioned, some of this education is not education, whether it's policies or, direct contact with the board. It's not really in the mayor's purview, as you mentioned, but you felt it was important to speak out about it previous to this podcast, and you just did here as well. So it sounds like in what you were saying, you wouldn't have necessarily spoken out at the same time as the current mayors in this area did the other day. You want to be involved in these things, even if it's not a direct link to the mayor. You want to be involved heavily in education in general, and make sure that little issues or bigger issues that come up, you're ahead of the curve instead of being reactionary.
Yes, because when industry comes here, whether they're headquartered in Charleston or not, they want to know, again, listen, this is a right to work state, and we always want to give tax credits and all this other stuff to people who come here. But their employers want to know, how's your public education system? How can you have the best schools on one side of town and you go 4 blocks over and you have a low performing school? Unacceptable. That is rooted in how we have gentrified the city. That is rooted in how we have not planned for life after gentrification. Is rooted in how we construct our recreation centers, how we transform communities and neighborhoods. It's a direct correlation to all of that. So it's important that as mayor, you recognize that, to say, how can I be more engaged in making sure that families and kids are learning 365 days of the year, not just while they are in school? And there are tangible things that we can do to close the summer learning loss that exists for far too many of our kids. There are, whether you're looking at how we are investing in kids, when we tell a child, your city, your community has your back from day one, we can do that through having financial incentives as relates to their college. You have communities across this country. Birmingham, Alabama is one. They have a program called the Birmingham Promise, where every kid that graduated from a public high school, the Birmingham Promise pays for your college at a state-supported school. Buffalo, New York. Say yes to Buffalo. You graduate from a public school, we're going to pay for your college. What are you interested in? You will have an internship in your city when you come home during the summer. Reading programs, making sure that families, not just the student, but it's a family thing, that you have apprenticeship opportunities for education, but also that job opportunity. As mayor of the city of Charleston, I would have youth and adult apprenticeship programs within the city. These are things that most of it don't need council approval on, based on our form of government. Just the leadership to say, here is a shared vision. Here are things that other communities are doing. And if they can do it, not only can we do it, we can do it better. We can do it the Charleston way, the right way, the forward-thinking way. We can do these things and change the trajectory of many of our kids in many of our communities that we know are marginalized, that we know are suffering, that we have helped to suffer, right?
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
It is, if you like what you got, keep doing what you're doing. But if you want more, deserve more, and expect more from your mayor and city hall, I have something tangible to offer in the categories I talked about earlier, but also regarding climate, regarding public safety, regarding you fill in the blank. Because there's no shortage of issues that we have. But I do think that society is always judged at how you treat your young and how you care for your elderly.
You know, when you're running for office, you know, of course, there's almost always an incumbent unless they've said they're not running again. And so everyone who's running against that incumbent will talk about what they would do differently than that person. So for those who have listened to forums or have read news stories, looked into the candidates, obviously every other person who is not currently in office running will say similar things. You know, yes, this is an issue. Yes, I think this needs to change. So you're all pitching a sort of change in some capacity from what's been going on. How do you feel you differentiate from the other non-incumbents when it comes to why your vision will be better for Charleston than theirs?
I don't need a study to tell me what's wrong, how to fix it. I am conscious, as is. I come at this because of my unique blend of experience at every level of government, in uniform, and working in Charleston. So when someone comes to me regarding an issue of affordable housing, attainable housing, whatever you call it, I know what we have done. I've laid out what we should be doing and can do. And I've been very intentional of not focusing on what hasn't been done, what the incumbent isn't doing. It is saying what I would do and what we could accomplish together and laying that out. My website, I've been very intentional of talking more bullet points. Here are the things that I would do, what we would do together. That is the difference. Because when we try to sound smarter, when we try to insult people's intelligence, people get offended by those things, and they should.
Mm.
For me, it's saying that I am uniquely ready on day one to lead and manage a growing city like Charleston because of my experience, relationships, and track record of not needing a study to say what's wrong, how to fix it, or to be convinced that certain problems need to be addressed. So, because of those things, I believe, and having young kids, because they always keep you honest, but I think it's just very important that we just take a look at who we want to lead our city for the next 4 years, because whomever the voters decide, the decisions that will be made in the next 4 years is going to affect what happens in the next 12 to 20 years. And we've seen that from the previous administration. So we should not be surprised that decisions that happened 12, 16 years ago, projects are coming online over the last 8. Decisions that have been made over the last 8 have led us to some certain situations now and into the future. So as I tell people when they ask, well, what will you do when if elected? I said, well, I'm going to inherit a budget that this administration would and this council would have passed. So there's not so much I could change with that. There are some things, obviously, but most things I cannot change because it has been approved. So we have to have a jump start on the following year's budget. So I would have a participatory budget process where we actually engage the citizens on the projects that they feel we need to invest in. The other part of that is having a financial audit as well as a work audit done. Outside of the people side of that, having a financial audit would show what is truly coming in and what's going out, so that we could start the budget process a little bit earlier as it relates to making sure that the next budget, the one that I would lead with a new set of council members, share our values and what we have to face, not only in the next year, but in the foreseeable future. That would be something I would continue to do. And then when people want to engage in other issues that we have that are systemic, and I just talk about specifics, here are things that we can be doing that we are not. I cannot answer the question of why we're not. I'm just asking to vote for me so we can.
You kind of just gave that last pitch, but if you could, do you have any last word for voters, why they should vote for you? Or in addition to that, anything that I didn't ask you about, or we just didn't have time to get to, that you think is important and you just want to make sure you get that word out to the voters?
Well, again, I appreciate this time. And again, there are no shortage of issues within our community, especially a city that would have 200,000 people in it very soon, a region that would have 1 million people very soon. And how do we grow? How do we grow smartly? How do we meet the demands of residents first? And there's no shortage of it. I just ask people, if you like what you have, and I'm not your person, and that's okay. But if you want more, expect more, and deserve more from your mayor and city hall, I have something tangible to offer. My website, claymiddleton.com, lays out very specifically what I would do and what we can accomplish together if elected mayor on a number of issues. I do not have all of the answers, and anytime I think I may be the smartest person in the room, I leave. Because I want to surround myself by people that are practitioners. I want to involve more people in the decision-making process that have been left out, so that they know that you may have been on the menu before, but under this administration, you would help shape the future of Charleston for a generation yet born. And that's how we ought to lead in the next half of the 21st century. And as mayor of the city of Charleston, I would do everything in my power not to leave any neighborhood, community, or resident behind, and create a Charleston that not only works for everyone, but that is affordable, accessible, and livable for residents first.
Clay Middleton, a candidate for mayor of Charleston. Good luck on Election Day, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and to my listeners so they can learn a little bit more about you and your campaign.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much again to Clay Middleton. Really appreciated him taking the time out of his very busy schedule to chat with us today. Hopefully we can get some more of the candidates on. I know it's crunch time. I wish we could have started earlier on some of these, but perhaps we'll get some more folks here on the podcast before Election Day. Don't forget to vote, whether you do so early or on Election Day, Tuesday, November 7th. Thanks for listening. It's a lot of fun to put these out for you. If you want to support the podcast and keep it going strong, you can go to holycitycenter.com/shop where you can pick up some merchandise. You can also go to patreon.com/holycitycenter where you can sign up for one of those support tiers. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins, who produced this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio through LMC Sound System. And a big thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every episode as well. Have a fantastic weekend. Go to holycitycenter.com/events if you're looking for some plans. I will talk to you all again on Monday. Until then, good night and good luck.